Hi, good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight with our cyber task force. I'm really excited about the conversation tonight, and the guest speaker tonight is my daughter, Adriana Perez. She is a software architect, and she's, the mom of my grandchildren, and also the mom of my grandchildren here in Hillsborough County Schools. She does have a dog in the fight when it comes to protecting her children, my grandchildren, from the cyber space. And so I'm excited to hear her voice, but also her concern with an experience she had with the cyber world. I'm going to let her speak her experience, and then we're going to have a conversation from that experience. So, but first, I think Bianca Goolsby is going to share something from CNN with regard to what she's going to be speaking to, and take it from there. But Bianca, my amazing sidekick, or I don't know if I'm her sidekick, but we're working this together to keep our children safe from the cyber world. Of course, as every parent knows, the cyberspace is very big, very intrusive, and our kids are the ones that are always harmed by it. So Bianca, take it away.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, School Board Member Perez. I'm very excited for this conversation today. There is a video that I want to play that's going to set the stage of this conversation. This is from Good Morning America, and this was actually published on their YouTube page 3 months ago. And so there's a situation that has happened more recently since then that I want everyone to be aware of, but I just want to play the clip so that you can hear what is exactly happening with these virtual kidnapping ransom scams.
Now with our series Scam You, a new FBI report finds that nearly 40,000 victims lost about $55 million from extortion scams last year. One of the most emotionally devastating kinds, virtual kidnapping. We spoke exclusively with a family who was targeted. Ariel Ruschiff is here with that story for us. Good morning again, Ariel.
Good morning to you, Robin. Getting scammed is always frustrating, even financially devastating, as you mentioned. But this hoax is terrifying. Perpetrators tricking people into thinking that their loved one has been kidnapped, and then they demand ransom. And one woman tells us the call her family received was so convincing, it was traumatizing.
This morning, an urgent warning from a woman who says she fell victim to an alarming scam known as virtual kidnapping.
This was like the realest, scariest moment of my entire life. I was terrified that he was going to kill my sister.
Beth Royce tells us her experience left her so shaken, she took to TikTok to alert others. The video now with more than 6 million views.
I was awoken this morning at 7:20 a.m. roughly to a phone call from my sister. Like, it was her contact. It was her face that popped up on my phone. It looked exactly like my sister was calling.
In her case, Beth said thieves hijacked her sister Kayla's actual number, the caller claiming to be holding her hostage, demanding money to free her.
He sounded really erratic, so he was yelling at me a lot. He said, "You're not going to tell anyone. You're not going to call the police. Don't tell a soul or I'm going to shoot your sister."
Beth seen on home security footage while on the phone with the man for 15 minutes. She alerted her mother, who was staying at her house.
She was mouthing to me, "They got Kayla, they're going to kill her."
Beth's mom says she immediately called police and her daughter Kayla's phone to see if she would answer.
She's like, "Where are you? Are you real?" And I was like, I'm in my house in Seattle.
I'm going to pay you right now.
Meanwhile, outside, Beth is still on the line with the man. So panicked, she transferred $1,000 for what she thought would secure her sister's safety.
It went all the way through.
But after sending the money and police arriving, Beth realized it was all a hoax.
My mom said, I have Kayla on the phone, and I muted myself and I yelled into my mom's phone, Kayla, are you there? Are you okay? And she's like, yes, I'm fine. And then I was like, then who does this guy have? Because it sounded so real. And she said, I don't know.
Authorities warn these scammers can spoof a legitimate number from your contacts, and they'll go to great lengths to stoke fear, keeping you on the phone until you agree to send a payment.
The whole idea is to keep your anxiety so high you won't think logically about whether this is real or not and pay the money.
And Beth says she has filed a police report, but so far she has not recovered any of her money. But she is just thankful, Robin, that her sister is safe.
Yeah, but what should people do if they get a call like this?
There are a couple of things you can do to determine whether or not this is a scam. You should ask to speak with your loved one, the person that they're claiming to hold hostage. Ask the caller to describe your loved one for you. You can also stay on the line, but try texting or contacting your loved one through social media or other means to make sure they're indeed out of harm's way. Robin.
All great suggestions there, Ariel, but again, glad everybody's safe there. Yeah. But they can be so believable.
And that's frightening to even imagine.
What that family felt, or how they felt, and especially when somebody's getting woken up, to this unexpected phone call. But it hit near and dear to my home, and I want to invite my daughter Adriana Perez into this conversation. Hey, Adriana.
Hi.
Welcome to our amazing platform. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. So can you talk about your experience a minute with us?
Yes. So I received a phone call on May 12th. When I answered the call, there was some mumbling on the phone that was saying mom. I immediately thought it was my youngest child. Looking back on it now, it could have been any voice that was on the phone, but when you're getting a call like that and someone's calling you mom and you don't know what's going on, you immediately, I think, associate it with who you think it is. So I was thinking this was my youngest child. The voice was continuing to cry and beg for help, asking for mom. I kept asking, who is this? What's going on? Where are you? I was frantic and feeling like in a panic because the call caught me off guard completely. I was in the middle of working, but I had never experienced getting a call like this before, so I wasn't sure how to react. But I tried to remain calm and just ask questions. I knew better than to disclose any information on the call. That's why I just asked questions instead of saying anything. A man got on the phone and started saying he was a part of an organization and that they had kidnapped my child. He started asking for my name, and that's when I hung up the phone. The call was roughly a minute long. It wasn't very long, but like I said, I had heard of the cyber ransom calls before. I just never thought I would get one. I had actually just heard about it just a few days prior. Like I mentioned, when you're in the middle of working and you get such a horrific call, someone's crying, it sounds like they're hurting. It left me feeling very shaken and terrified. After I hung up the phone, I still wasn't convinced that they did not have my child. I just wasn't sure what to do. So I got up. I was in fight or flight mode. I was running around looking for my son, and thankfully he was just napping in bed. And I would just recommend after this situation, what I felt like I needed to do at my family is to set up a safety word. So it's only known within our family, and it goes both ways as far as, I can ask my children if in the event a call like this happens, and also, ensures that my children do not go off with any strangers trying to trick them. But I also did not know this phone number. So just, being cautious about answering unknown phone numbers. And if you get a call like this, just be sure not to disclose any further information. You can ask questions if you want to, but I would not disclose names or any information.
So, I like the fact that you had the wherewithal to establish the safety word. A lot of parents don't know, to do that, with their children. And thank you for that, for putting that out for the parents to understand that, how important that is, to be able to identify their child and for them to be able to say that, but also, how do you, educate your children on being able to, be safe themselves? You mentioned, not, having that stranger danger conversation with your kids.
Definitely stranger danger conversations. I do, as a parent, put a lot of parental controls on things, but we do have internet safety like within our home. I know that they do that in the schools where they'll cover that with children, but we discuss it in our home. I'll discuss with them what certain threats look like. In particular, one that I feel like kids are more susceptible to is friends that they'll meet on like online gaming chats or online games of children that they think are similar ages, but they're actually adults. And I explain to them this could actually be an adult. Don't disclose any information. So things like that, because you want to allow your children to play games and things, but also they need to understand how to be safe when they're in those kinds of environments.
Mm-hmm. And you know what's the irony of it all is that you're a what? What is your profession?
I am a software architect.
Yeah. And if this frightened you, imagine someone who is not into, like me, who is not, in anything internet, imagine how I would have felt, like the young lady in the CNN video. They would have, went ahead and paid this ransom because they honestly thought that was, a real thing, but you were able to pause for a moment. Go ahead.
I was just going to say one thing that I do try to, and I have to do this as part of my job. So I have to stay aware of security threats and things like that. So I do stay up with the latest technology. But just making sure that you are aware of potential threats, like just reading maybe there's a bunch of different like technical news sites that you can go to, but different threats that are presented. I don't really watch the news that much, so had I not been staying up to date with uh, these threats, I would not have even been aware. I probably would have been like, "Oh my, they have my child," and would have had the same response as this woman. But I had just heard about this. And then I looked into it further, saw a few of the interviews, and I was like, okay, stay calm, ask questions, and then that was it. But my feelings during the time were very real. I was terrified, and I felt terrified for the rest of the day, even after finding him. I was just like, "Oh my! Like if this could have happened, like I just felt like I was really put in the situation." So
So do these folks, I don't know if you know this answer, but do they use that AI to, to produce this type of conversation on the phone? Do you
I
know?
don't I don't know if they do or not. I know that there's capabilities of being able to have a voice recording. You'll see it all the time where people will do like deep fakes where they can even present someone. You can take somebody's image and have somebody talking. So even with a video chat with someone, I wouldn't necessarily trust that. You can copy someone's voice if you get enough information from the internet. Like if your children are recording videos on YouTube, which I think a lot of children do. There's all sorts of stuff. I can't say for sure what this particular caller did. It seemed like they had a very generic voice. Like I said, looking back on it now, it seemed like it could have been anyone. But when you're a frantic parent, you immediately associate it with your child or someone that you love. Like it could just be just that. And it sounds like a child on the phone. You immediately want to help because who wouldn't?
Right. So that, I mean, that's where I wanted you to, provide your or lend your expertise to, Adriana, is that, a lot of children are getting on the internet, are recording a lot of videos, are putting themselves out to, being susceptible to being, used, through the internet. So what, as a parent, of my amazing grandchildren, I gotta say they're the best in the world. But what advice would you give parents as far as, putting that out there, especially now that the internet is getting so different. It's not the same internet that, at least I grew up with or you grew up with, for that matter. And they're using these recordings. People get on there, download those recordings and really manipulate those recordings in a different manner, especially with children on it.
Yeah, so when it comes to your children, I think a lot of parents, myself included, we are very proud of our children. We want to share our children. We want our children out there, especially to share with other family members that we may not have nearby or friends. But I think it's important that you safeguard, you put up safeguards, you have parental controls, you review the content that your children are posting or that they're are dealing with. It's just like anything else with school or things that they have going on in their personal life. Their online presence should also have a parent highly involved in reviewing on a regular basis. And there are things that you can set up at home so that you can review like things like internet traffic, and other things just to make sure that you can monitor what your kids are doing. And it's not necessarily to, be like a control over the child, but it's more for safety. And like I said, I think the biggest tool, and I think with anything, whether it's your family, an organization that you're working with, education is the best tool that you can provide to anyone. Because if you are not educated and you don't know what threats can be present, you won't know what to be cautious of, and that goes for your children as well.
So when you're putting up parental controls, it's not that you're trying to control your child, it's that you're trying to provide the safety for, that you're putting up a electronic safety wall, just like you would when you put a lock on your door, to keep people out, keep the bad people out. You don't sleep with your door open for a reason. So
yeah, absolutely. The kids have downloaded so many like viruses on their laptops. I'm like, okay, enough. They're like, oh, I get 1,000 Robux. That's like the biggest one. The Robux scam. They always were falling for that. I'm like, this is fake. No more. So then when they realize like, okay, I'm not getting 1,000 Robux, I just put a virus on my computer, they understand what things not to click on. And there's also, if your child wants to download things, there are controls that you can put in place that your child can send you a request. Hey, I want to download this. Do I get approval to download it? And so that's the process that we have now with the kids, and it goes to me or their dad, email sent out, and they can request to download certain things or to visit certain sites, and it allows us to review it proactively versus doing some sort of reactive review.
So Bianca, I think you've just met your co-person here. She's amazing.
Yes,
and
indeed.
She's great. But I have in the chat, Emily Lee says, when kids push back, we need to stay vigilant. We know the dangers, they fully don't get it. So what would you say to that, Adriana?
So I will tell you, I was a little bit hesitant to tell the kids about this call because I knew for some of them it would be a little bit scary, and it was. But just getting them involved in what I think some people may view as adult conversations, like they have to be aware that these threats are there. And also, there's enough content out there to share with your children. Show them, they can watch videos on YouTube. There's all sorts of things that to show them other people's experiences. but I think it's showing them the examples and showing them how real things can get. And I know we want to protect our children and keep them children as long as possible and very innocent, but they have to understand the reality and the severity of the things that are out there. So not sugarcoating things. I think sugarcoating things is actually more dangerous for your children.
Thank you. And Barb has a question as well. Forgive me, Barb, if I mispronounce your last name, Wishart. But she's asking, how do they know who to call, or is it a totally random?
So I cannot tell you 100%, but I have two theories on this based off of what I've seen, because I actually ended up getting another ransom call on a Google Voice number that I have for a business. So I think what they do is they can put together phone numbers and they'll just send out lots of calls where they'll basically spam and see what phone numbers are active. And then they'll come back to see if they can then do a follow-up call to have this ransom call. Another way that they can do this is on the dark web. If you guys are not familiar, your information, like your data that you submit to websites and things like that, so things that you don't think are very important, like your phone number or email, I think we kind of just provide them to anybody at this point when we're signing up for services. That kind of information is actually sold, and it's sold in bulk. So they can create a program, input basically all of the data that they've gotten there, and just send out spam calls that way as well, where they don't have to basically like put together phone numbers to see what phone numbers are active, but they can actually purchase that information.
Just to add on that, in the situation where the video was played, that person pretended to be someone's sister. And so what if that person didn't have a sister? Then automatically we know that's fraudulent. So it's very important that some of these calls, they're trying to get whoever can get on the phone as quickly as possible. And so they have no emotional attachment to you. They have an attachment to the money, which is why they want to invoke fear to get the money from you as fast as possible. So we have to stay vigilant to that question. We have to stay vigilant because we don't know.
So let me ask this question as well. Some parents have their kids answer their phone for them, right? What do you speak to that, Adriana? When, I know when you guys were younger, growing up, sometimes my phone would ring and I say, hey, just answer my phone for me. And that was okay because I didn't have these scary people calling, the phone, and it was just friends and you would answer. But now, what do you say to, kids answering parents' phones for them, especially when it's a known number, but people are using those known numbers at this point?
Yeah, so I personally, the kids don't get on my phone. But if I would to say in a situation like that, my recommendation would be, we obviously want to have phone etiquette, so your child should be answering the phone in a certain way. If something was to happen, to arise like an emergency, again, you can revert back to that safety word, or immediately tell your child to immediately come and get you if something's to happen like that. No discussion on the phone, nothing like that. And I mean, I would think that handing off the phone would probably be the best case scenario as far as your child doing that. But in the event, again, making sure the safety word conversation should not be a one-time thing. This should be probably something that you touch on a regular basis just to keep it fresh in your child's mind. Otherwise, it can kind of get lost if it's not something that is brought up on a frequent basis.
And they might forget it, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Like, what was that safety word now? I forgot with school and everything else and my friends. So
yeah,
good.
And this goes for text messages as well. Again, this has already been like, I know this is common practice actually between me and some of my colleagues that are, also in IT. Like if there's something that seems a little off or sketch, they'll ask me a question, and it's a specific question that they know what the answer will be, and I will answer the same every time. And so it's just, again, to verify who you're talking to.
Right.
Because it could be in any situation, not just, revolving family. It could be between friends and whatnot.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and we have seen cases where students would exchange information like their login, and so that has implications when that happens as well. So there needs to be a emergency safety plan at home to where there's an agreement that your logins that they need to be safe and secured, which means that no one else should have access but for the people who need to have access to them as well.
That has been a huge conversation in my home. We have made it so that even the sharing of password among siblings is not allowed. So it's that strict. I have administrator access to all of my kids' devices, so I don't necessarily need their password, but I want to teach them to maintain their passwords and not share that information with anyone. So it starts again within the home and making sure that they're not just very loose with giving the information out to just anyone. So we practice that security and safety first here, and it starts to trickle out once they get into other environments like school or with friends.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, do you have advice for parents, going forward, especially when school is starting, when they're starting from elementary on to middle school, from middle school on to, high school? What advice do you have for them? Because, children change and develop and grow. And, their access to the internet also changes. You move on to allow them a little bit more freedom. So what advice do you have for the parents with that?
Again, it's allowing your children to have their space to be able to explore, but being involved. Recognizing threats, staying educated yourself to educate your children, and that's at any stage of life. But also, one of the things too, and having children with such a large age range for me, you'll still have to point them in the direction of where to find information and ensuring that they have the tools and resources to look up what they need. So as a parent, your children may not always come to you, and they're how it always typically goes, at least from what I've seen, is that they're going to listen to their friends first. They're going to listen to influences first. They're going to listen to other people first because they want to be cool, and there's the parents are just trying to be parents. But if you can find them the resources and tools or information from people that they can relate with, they'll be able to find that information themselves and process it. But I would say their online presence is just as equally as important as what they're doing in their day-to-day. Whether you're taking them to soccer, you should also be checking what they're doing in their online gaming forums. It shouldn't just be, oh, they play video games all the time. They can also chat with people there too. Ask them questions, see who they're talking to, see what kind of information that they're giving out to people, educate them on what information they shouldn't, and just staying involved in that way.
Now, do you have this conversation with their parent, with the parents of their friends, to also say, my child, you set those limitations with those parents, to be able to say, my child is not allowed, or this is the boundary that I have with my child when it comes to online. Because some kids may have that boundary at home, but then they go to their friend's house and do something different.
I haven't necessarily had that conversation. I think that's actually a very good point, as far as establishing boundaries once they go to someone else's home. But I have not had that conversation. So that's probably something that, because each parent is going to they're going to do things different. No matter how much I tell them this is what, I don't have any control or access over their devices or what they're doing. So all I can do is communicate what I expect. But that is definitely a conversation I think that would be beneficial to have.
Okay, someone said that game chats is where I found the most issues with my teenager. I know the grandbabies get on. Excuse me, I don't know the technology, but those mask virtual reality, I guess, right?
Yeah, the Meta.
Yeah, there. Yes, thank you.
The Oculus, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I don't know, if they have conversations there. I'm just, I'm a grandma. I'm a true grandma. But what happens there?
They can interact with other people. Like I'll hear them talking to people. I'm like, who are you talking to? So like it's again, I feel like again it's how you approach things. Like just get involved. Like if your child was to have a friend at school, you'd be like, oh well, tell me more about your friend, or they meet somebody at their little league or something like that. Just ask questions. If you feel like something is off, if they're telling you, oh well, I told them this and that, this person lives in Ohio, they said they can come down and visit me, well then we have something else going on, we need to have a further discussion. And then also too, you have the ability as a parent to go in and look at some of these chats, figure out what's going on. But again, it's really that is where I have also found that kids are they're susceptible, they're very vulnerable in these game chats. And it does not have to be something as mainstream either, as when they're going into like doing anything with Meta or anything like that. It could be very small game chats. I think there was like a penguin game that the kids would play, and they would get in there, and there was a lot of stuff going on in these chats. There was like recruitment in these chats, all sorts of stuff of children. And so I would ask questions, and I'm like, okay, we're not going to interact with these people in this game. This is dangerous. So yeah, I don't think parents think about these game chats nearly as much as I want to block them from going to this site or this site. The game chats really are where I see a lot of the interactions occurring. It's basically like the instant messenger of today, right? Like where you can go and meet whoever out there. There's really no filtering of who can get on these forums.
Yes,
I see.
indeed.
Yeah. At first, Joe Cool. Thank you, Joe. Let them explore, but be involved. I'm going to use that when working with our families. Thank you for that. And then also, Kimberlyn, we have to get curious. Sometimes we cut off opportunities to learn what our children are experiencing because we don't ask enough questions. Let me say this, and not because she's my daughter, but my daughter would get into all her children's business and ask questions. Oh my goodness.
It's not like that though. I feel like I try to make it more of like it's a conversation where they want to tell me. I'm like, you got to spill the tea. You got to tell me what's going on. They're like,
Yes,
oh,
indeed.
They're like, you don't know. I have this, and that, and I'm like, I just sit back and listen, and it helps me get caught up. They're excited to tell me about it. They don't feel like I'm just trying to, scold them or go through their stuff. They're excited to tell me. And again, during those conversations, I can provide input for them. It's a conversation. It's not me just probing and just, trying to interrogate them. So.
And I've tried, as a grandparent, I've tried to, to play the game with them, and they're like, oh, let grandma play. She's going to die in 2 minutes anyway. So, but I try to get involved. And I do, they kill me off right away. But, but just knowing what they're doing is important. Just being active, and, understanding what they're playing. Sometimes I'll see one of the grandbabies on the tablet, and I'll say, what kind of game is this? And I know my daughter will jump in and say, oh, this is what, but she knows everything they're playing. She knows, the game. She knows the folks they're in contact with. And that's vital to understanding and protecting your children.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I just want to thank you for sharing your experience, and for the listeners that will watch this later, or for the folks that are here right now in this moment, thank you for being a part of this vital conversation. There was a question that was asked earlier about the fear and how we can help people protect themselves without operating from a fearful place. And this is where, as a village, we have to, one, educate and let folks know that this exists, that this is out here, so that when this does happen, something in their brain could tap and be like, I've heard this before. Let me think, let me stop. Because once you operate out of a place of fear, that's why the woman lost her $1,000 and now is still fighting to get her $1,000 back, because she thought that her sister was missing. And then even after her sister was verified, it took her a minute to be like, okay, she's actually safe. And so it's going to take a village. So remember. Mm-hmm.
Oh, can I just say one thing about that? As far as situations that occur, in any situation that you know is a possibility, especially emergency situation, if you're dealing with emotions, you can have a certain set of steps that you outline for yourself no matter what. So I know some people will keep these kinds of things on their phone, like for different scenarios, what questions they need to ask themselves. But you can go through, maybe just have a reminder for yourself set. If something like this happens, you bring it up, and maybe not even in that moment that's just your default. You know, I have these things I need to go through, and you go through and you say, okay, these are questions I need to ask myself before proceeding. Like, just have a reminder for yourself that's external to you, so that you're not going into panic mode, and steps that you need to take that you were able to write down when you were in a calm state and rational state, that you can, I would say, refer to later. I see other people do that quite a bit, and I'm like, okay, I need to do that for myself, whether I'm doing something for time management or stressing myself out. It's like, hold on a minute, let me refer to this. But I think it's good to put something in place beforehand.
Yes, indeed. Member Perez, any last thoughts?
Yes, I am so proud to have my daughter as a guest speaker today, and hopefully we'll have her back on, because I want to be able to talk about, in the next couple of months about the AL chat GPT, and how that is really changing the face of a lot of things. Whether it's our students in school, completing, their homework assignments, whether it's how we're interacting, with each other, but also where that's going in the future, and how we see it working for our schools, for the betterment of our schools. Because I know that chat GPT or AL it's a good thing on one hand, if we really look at it, because it's going to help a lot of our students who don't have the language, acquisition, have not acquired that. It's going to help them along. But also, the issue with that is, as well, is that children are cheating in school, and how that's affecting them in preparing them for the future. Do you want to chime into that for a minute? And then we're going to, talk about that later on. Adrienne.
Well, with Chat GPT, with great tools always comes great checks as far as checks and balances. So I would hope that the schools and teachers are equipped with being able. They have AI detection as far as if something is written by AI. Do I think it's a great resource? Absolutely. And I think a lot of people are taking it and creating great tools based off of, Chat GPT as a foundation. But I think as there are more, as this it can becomes a more norm in our society, there will be more checks and balances that come with it, for sure.
And,
Yes,
and
indeed.
yeah, Emily Lee has a question here. It says, teachers hear and see a lot of kids' business on social during school and even online. What is our role and advice on approaching parents with concerns? So let me ask you this, Adriana. If a teacher saw something that one of the grandbabies put something online and wanted to bring a concern, what would you think as a parent?
So there's two things. There have been some concerns I've had. I do try to um, screen who the kids are friends with. So I typically don't like I'll make them be friends with me. I'm like, you're gonna have to be friends with me if you want to be on social media, so I can check that. It's like no fun, but so I have to just say this: if you're not friends with your child on social media, that's already a problem in and of itself. You should be able to see what's going on, and again, be active in monitoring their account, because they can hide stories from you, they can hide certain things, so just make sure that they do not have you categorized in that group. But if a teacher was to come to me and tell me, like, let's say that they've seen something on social media, I would want to receive that information, so that I can do whatever I need to as a parent. I know some parents may not receive it well, though, just because um, that's their child's social media. And I don't know. I personally would not want my children to have association with any adults on social media, but I also review who they're friends with. So um, if I'm not knowing what they're doing, that's probably a problem already. But I would want to know if the teacher is on there and I was not aware what was going on their social media. I would want the teacher to approach me and let me know what's going on, because that's going to be the first step to me getting active if I wasn't already.
If it says somewhat related, new legislation allowing teachers to ban cell phone use and giving the teachers um, auto on how and when they manage phones, have students put them in on a wall holder, and upon entering the class, my understanding is that administrators must support the teacher's protocols. If they don't, they must see fines, etc. Will the district address this directly and create a uniform approach for all? Right now, the parents are not thrilled about this because they feel that if there was a school shooting, the children need to have or any incident in the school, the students need to have the cell phones on them. And second is that there's some teachers that don't aspire to this protocol, and some teachers who do. So if they're going to do it, they have to do it, all the way around. Some teachers want their students to have the cell phones in the classrooms in order for them to do their work. Some teachers don't want them to have their autonomy. Thank you. Some teachers don't want the distraction in the classroom. So then it starts confusing the student. So we have to have. I know I've worked on policy regarding cell phone use and how these students use the cell phone in the schools. because they start taking videos and posting it during school time when there's a fight or regarding bullying in schools. So it's an issue. I know we didn't have this problem when we didn't have cell phones in the schools. So, but parents want their child, to be able to reach them at all times. So we continue to address this issue in the classrooms, right now. Adriana, how do you feel about that? Would you want would you want the grandbabies to have access to that phone? How would you want that access to that phone? Would you want them to put it away, use it during class time, or would you feel that it's appropriate for them to put it away just in case of an emergency?
So the kids know that they cannot use the phone at school. Like, it is such a hard rule that they will lose their phone. The only time that they're allowed to use the phone is in the case of an emergency, like if they need me to pick them up or something like that. That is the only exception to that rule. And they'll do that. It actually is quicker for me to get a text from them to say, "Hey, mom, can you pick me up?" than them to go to the office or do whatever. So that is it. They know not to have the phone on any other time, though. And again, you can go through and if you're being if you want to be proactive and make sure that the kids are following rules, you can check that. Hey, are they texting during times? You can also put parental controls on when your children can use the phone and to what extent. So again, those parental controls, in this day and age, technology is so great. You can really just limit what your kids can do without having to go through and do a whole bunch of monitoring, because I know that that's a full-time job all in itself. But I would want the children to have access to their phones. There's been a couple of times they have been really sick and they've needed to reach me, and I would prefer it that way.
And that's a great segue. I actually have QR codes for parents and caregivers and community members where it links right directly to Apple. In this case, it will take you right to the Apple's website. You're able to determine how to set up parental controls, whether it's a tablet, an iPod, or an iPhone, a MacBook, whatever is on the Apple ecosystem. This QR code, if you scan it, it will go ahead and take you right to the support with Apple so that you can get that information. And of course, I can't leave out the Android family. And so, again, this QR code will take you to Google Family Link. This is their setup on how they do things over at Google. You can go to families.google. That is the URL to get here. And it walks you step by step on how to set up these devices so that you have a clear understanding of how this device works, what you're looking for, and the expectations that you want for your child.
So for next month, Bianca, what is our theme?
So next month, we are going to talk about AI and the implications of ChatGTP in the education space, and also just holistically as we're talking about our children using these tools. So absolutely. I also just want to uplift that to stay informed with our upcoming events and what we're doing. We do have a mailing list that I would love for you to be a part of. And please scan the QR code. It'll take you there so that anytime that we have any updates, emails, you will get them on the next events that we will have. So I just want to thank y'all for being here and being present. And I'm glad that y'all are a part of this mission, because we have to protect our children out here.
And thank you, Adriana, for joining us tonight and for, sharing your experience, and then also your incredible knowledge with us.
I appreciate you guys having me. Hopefully it helps someone. So that's my goal.
And you will be back, right?
If you'll have me.
Yes, Bianca. I think I'm probably going to get kicked out, but you'll be Bianca's sidekick, and
Yes, indeed. Well, did you have any closing remarks, Member Perez, before we close out and adjourn tonight?
Yes. Actually, I'm going to let my daughter have some closing remarks about the safety and security of our children in Hillsborough County.
Okay. So I just gonna go back over basically what we covered in this call. And I can't reiterate enough, being involved with your children, having those conversations. As Bianca has posted and shared today in this meeting, enabling parental controls to make your involvement proactive instead of reactive, and education, not just for your children but for yourself, and making that as a part of your family's regular conversations. Take time for yourself to review active threats, and just because technology is around us everywhere. Given that I'm in an IT field, it's something that I do as a part of my job, but all of us, we all touch technology, so do our children. So it's important that we educate ourselves on what threats are out there, and we stay up to date on a regular basis.
Thank you. And I'm so honored that you joined us tonight. And thank you, Bianca, for all you do and continue to do on a daily basis for Hillsborough County, our schools, our babies, and our community.
Yes, indeed. It takes a village. And thank y'all for sharing. And we will see y'all next month. Please stay engaged in the mailing list so that you can get the details on the next conversation that we have. And until next time, take care with love.